Hey there, welcome into this edition of Midweek. I'm Owen, and it is great to be with you here on this Wednesday. We gather here every Wednesday just to unpack, extend conversation, walk out what we got from Sunday, and try to make it practical, make it relational, and even have a little fun with it. So I got a couple of guests I'm going to bring on here in a second that you will recognize. But first, in case you wandered into this corner of the internet, and you're like, who are these people? We are Heights Church. We're out in Prescott, Arizona. You can join us on live for services every week, every Sunday, online at 10:30 and 6 p.m. We're also live at 8:30 and at 10:30. And we also have a lot of other things we offer right here on this YouTube channel. So go ahead and hit subscribe. And that way you won't miss out on anything. You can always go back and check out from our library of what we offer here on YouTube. And most of all, we want to connect with you. We're here. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're online. Just check us out. And we're here to help people encounter Jesus and connect with him. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's conversation. We're on Moses, talking about Moses and his encounters with God. I'm going to bring in two guys you will know if you've been around Heights for any length of time. So here we go. Welcome in, boys. We got Jala. And we've got John, our lead pastor. Hey, guys. How we doing?
Hey, Owen.
All right. Now, Jala has technically, you've been on Midweek before, but it's been a long time, and you have not yet experienced the walk-up music that you get.
I'm terrified.
One of the benefits of being on Midweek. And John pointed out this could be my audition maybe for, like, the worship team. So
yeah, you got to do good, man. This is it. This is it. No pressure, but like
try to not be too impressed. So here we go.
I mean, Jala only plays guitar on stage.
Music. I thought you were gonna like cue music.
Oh no. This is live music.
No, it's live, man. It's live.
It's big man with a tiny ukulele. You ready?
My goodness.
Get ready yourself.
Every band needs one. Just saying.
This is it. You walk up music. Here we go. Ready?
Hey,
there he
is. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Jala
Diddley. Oh, man.
Well, what did you think was going to happen, Jala? You were.
I got scared. I thought you were going to cue like music from Spotify, and then it was going to be something that I don't know. But this is honestly, I'm just pretty off and twisted, so that was way better. I honestly thought you were gonna like cue rap music or something, so I'm really happy that you played that beautiful little diddly. So
what do you I feel like
are we doing a Hawaiian Sunday or something?
So on a scale of 1 to like in the band, where does that fall? Like,
I mean, I'm still into the video that's on Instagram of you playing the electric kazoo through a bunch of pedals. So I'm still ready for that.
Anytime. Put me in, coach, man. I'm ready.
Owen's going to be on stage with like a little table of like a bunch of different like all these tricks and random instruments and sort of stuff. So
I feel like he's been trying to work his magic, Jolly, like at the end of the message when it's all vibey, or, even under the coming out of worship into the host spot. Like, I feel like he's working his way with his electric kazoo sounds for that spot.
Yeah. I'm back there. I feel like me and Preston should vibe like
you guys are starting a band, right? So
Preston, we vibe out. I got all kinds of vibey instruments. Yeah.
You guys
are
So Jala, before we jump in to you have a picture behind you. John, have you seen this picture?
I did.
We got guys. This is for real. Elvis is about to enter the building.
But I don't fully know the story. I actually texted my mom trying to find out, and I don't know how I don't know it. But this right here is my grandfather, and that is no joke, Elvis Presley.
What?
Dude,
and this was when he was in the Navy, and I legit don't know how they were eating a meal together in this era.
What?
I think Elvis was in the Air Force, and for whatever reason, so it has a big old grin on my grandma's. But yeah,
that's amazing.
Random. So
do you think? I mean, your grandpa was Right? Your grandpa was a cook in the
He's
Navy.
Cook in the Navy. So maybe
You could have cooked him that meal, dude.
And then got to hang out. I don't know. It's super random. So I'll have to find out and then follow up an update. So, because it's random, which is why I haven't asked is bizarre. I don't even know why. But yeah, super weird.
Wow.
But it looks
That's
like
crazy.
Elvis is having a good time. I mean, it's not like it's one of these forced like publicity photos. Like they're just hanging out. Like he's having some coffee, just chilling.
Honestly, I like to think that maybe he touched like my grandfather's like shoulder high five, I don't know, fist bump, and then like some of the dance moves transferred. So, I mean, my very poor dance moves compared to the king. So, but you know,
I was thinking the other way. He got them from your grandpa.
Could be.
That's it.
So that's it. That's what you're famous for now. Your family genes passed on the dance moves to Elvis.
Elvis got his mojo from that cup of Joe from your grandpa.
That's right.
I was telling Owen, it's funny because my grandpa's name was Lawrence Scudder, which what kind of middle name is Scudder? Elvoid. So little Lawrence Scudder got to meet Elvis. So super random.
Dude, that's crazy.
That's pretty awesome. See? So there you go. Cool. You never know what's going to happen on midweek.
Dude, it all happens on midweek. You know they'd be having beans at that breakfast. You know that, right? That meal had beans. For sure.
Wait, Jolly, get that picture out. Let's look at it.
Sure.
Look for beans.
For sure.
What's on the table?
There's beans on that table.
What are they eating right now?
I'm pretty sure it's breakfast.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole pile of toast right there.
There you go.
And then I feel like all this stuff looks like eggs and maybe potato-y stuff. I don't know.
There's definitely beans there.
You see any beans?
Oh, maybe the beans are right there.
Hey,
there's like a whole pot of. So maybe
Elvis like beans. That's what I just heard.
No, he's got his head turned away from those. He doesn't like it.
You just said he was enjoying himself, and there is beans at breakfast.
No, that's how cool his grandpa was. Like, even despite the terrible breakfast, they were having a good time.
Right.
Oh, man.
Oh,
random. Dude, Joe, it's always super great to have you and have you on and get to chat. And I know church family appreciates your heart, your love for the Lord, your talents. So it's always a pleasure. Nice. Okay, so I got a question to kick this off. This is after we talked about Elvis. Now this is kind of a more generally Bible related, walk with Jesus related question.
Good.
So when you were growing up, Jala, what do you remember, like what you thought about God? Like who was God? What was he like? And then I guess I'll leave it with that. When you were a kid growing up, what was God like to you?
Oh man. Weird childhood. So I thought God was weird, and I thought Christianity was weird, and then hit a point that I thought God was kind of just a big mean jerk in the sky. So, but because of just weird random stuff, my grandparents went to like a prosperity gospel word faith church. And so like as a little kid, they were always like if I said I was sick, they got mad at me. They're like, you can't say you're sick. That means like you're giving the devil permission to make you sick, and you don't have faith, and you got to speak that devil out of you. I was like, no, I'm just sick. But it's just a thing. So like random stuff like that. They actually made me go up to get healed one time in a service because sitting in the seat, I sneezed and told my grandma like, oh man, I got a cold. And she was like, go walk up there. Get healed. I was like, oh, crazy. I'm fine now. I'm good.
You got healed before you went up. You were like, hey, I'm good.
And the guy literally, it was a whole gospel church. Everyone's excited. And man, guy like winded up his hand and like pushed me back to call the devil out. And I didn't fall back. And then I looked around and saw what everyone else was doing. I was like, oh gosh, if I don't fall back, I'm going to be here a while. And he was like, okay, devil, not today, just kind of. I just let myself get launched. And then I sat down and my grandma was like, you healed? I was like, I'm healed. Don't talk about it. So super weird, like experience with that. And so I just kind of felt like, I don't know what I think about you. It's weird. Like,
even when you were a kid, like part of you knew like there was something not right about that. Like, did you have that instinct? You're like, hey, that's not really what God's like?
Yeah, I knew it seemed off. I think what was so bizarre for me is my grandparents were so great that I was like, this is so weird that you're a part of this. And they tithed a lot, they served a lot, they're involved, like loved on people, church every Sunday, like really good, sweet people. So I was like, but where's all this wacky stuff coming from? So it's hard for me. Like in their youth ministry thing they had me go to, like one of the gals was like, oh, if you want to be saved, you have to be able to speak in tongues. If you can't speak in tongues, you're not saved. And so she was like showing us how to do it, which whatever you think of tongues is whatever, but it was more on the end of like, she was saying that equated to salvation, which is like, I don't know. So like you as a little kid, I was like, something's not firing. I think I believed in God. I just was confused by it all. And then like from other aspects of people I saw that were Christians, there was just a lot of hypocritical behavior. So like as a little kid, I was like, things are not adding up. So I thought God was real, but I thought all this stuff was weird. But
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense.
Which even now, knowing what's true and what's real, there's still aspects that you're like, that's interesting and weird, but that's the whole faith component and journey. So
yeah. Oh yeah. What about you, John? I mean, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here a little bit, but as a kid, you know, growing up, what was God like to you?
So I grew up going to church every Sunday. Like you were just there. And it's really interesting because I feel like in my early years, I'm split from my teen years. So my early years was like this childlike faith, if that makes sense. Like, you know, they'd ask for a testimony in church and apparently I would jump up every week and I got something to say about God, you know, like, so what I thought about him then, I don't know, other than he was real and probably didn't understand a whole lot. I definitely didn't understand salvation. I can remember as a kid, like, I don't know why Christmas Eve, but every Christmas Eve, like re-praying the sinner's prayer just in case, like, we didn't get it right the first time, you know? And it's like just a little insurance for Christmas Day, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, like real, like heaven and hell type belief system of, hey, you can go to a place where it's awesome, or you can go to a place where it's torture. Which one you want to go to? Well, I'm smart enough to choose. But then in my teen years, what's interesting is I didn't know this until I kind of hit the wall. But my parents were missionaries, and I gauged a lot of who God was by the way my parents were treated and what they went through. So like by the time I was 18, I completely rejected God based on my parents have given you their entire life as missionaries and sacrificed everything, and you can't, like, and this wasn't true, this was just my opinion, but like you can't put food on the table that's good food, you know, or you can't, like they're always scraping for money. Like you got a cattle on 1,000 hills and you can't kill one. Like what kind of God are you? You know? So it was really warped, and then that turned to anger and just a lot of like, God was the one that didn't allow us to have any fun. Christians weren't having fun in my circles. And so it was like, God's just this stuffy, angry, doesn't look after his own, you know? And so that shaped then my teen years drastically. I was just like, peace out. I don't want nothing to do with it. I want to go party. I want to have fun. And if God's over here in the non-fun camp and that's over there, like, okay, well, I'm out. So, but what's funny is even in the party camp, I'm still like, but I'm saved. So I don't know, man. I don't know how any of that works, but oh man, what about you, Owen?
Oh yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, both you guys, I have some similarities to my story a little bit. Last week we touched on it briefly, but you know, for me, like you, John, grew up in church every Sunday. I mean, I think, you know, my first time at church, I was 6 weeks old, you know, like went to the nursery and all that. But in my family, like they really meant well, but it was just a very rigid, very like legalistic, very rule-based, fear-based kind of faith, you know, or like, so I think for me, God was definitely like, if you prioritize what he was like, it was definitely like the rule keeper, you know, like he was like a referee, like he just kept score. And, you know, if you broke the rules, you got dinged for it, you know. But then you could also level up with him too. Like if you, you know, did good, you obeyed your parents, or you went to church, or as I got a little older, you go on a missions trip, like whatever, you could kind of level up, and God would be like more happy with you and your life would get better. So I kind of had that like earn God's approval, you know, kind of definitely was a big part of it. And so that was my growing up years. And then, you know, I hit college and I just didn't want that at all. Because like you, Jal, that's why I was asking you, like, did you know as a kid, like if this was a little bit off, like something about it, like I knew it was off. And I have no other way than maybe it was just God's grace. Like he would just be, you know, just showing me, like, even as a kid, it sounds weird, but, you know, as a young teenager, I'd be reading the Bible and I'd read about grace. I'd read about all these characters in the Bible that were just a series of mistakes. And God kept, like, they stayed in the game, I guess. Like God continued to let them have a part in what he was doing. And then I saw my surroundings where it's like one mistake and you're out, you know, like God's will for your life is changed and now you're on some alternate path that's less than what it could have been. And then I'm like, yeah, but David, or, you know, yeah, but Abraham, yeah, but Moses, you know what I mean? And so I just was like,
when you get a little older and you realize it's not just David and Goliath, like there's a whole lot other than David. You're like,
exactly.
Oh, this is grace. This
and
is,
you know, it's like, that doesn't give you permission, but it's like,
right.
You're not out of the game. Like I guess I had this view, like God had a plan for your life. And if you didn't stay on track, like you would fall off into some kind of alternate plan that wasn't as good. And he would be disappointed and you would be disappointed. And, you know.
I can remember being a teenager and it used to make, like, anger was my emotion towards God. And so I'd meet this girl. She would be, and like we get to the point where I find out she doesn't know Jesus at all, right? And I get so angry because I was like, there's no future. Like I know enough about the Bible to go, and it's kind of like you're saying, Owen, where I knew if I do this and do this, then it equals this, you know? And so it was like in relationships, I torched through them based on, it's like, well, there's no future, so see you later type thing. And then that would just make me even more angry at God. Like, why would you do this? Why does this happen? Why am I sitting here?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It's wild, man.
God to me felt very arbitrary. It was like, I know he had rules, but I didn't know why. Like there was no heart behind God whatsoever. It was like, here it is. And it's like, yep, you dated a non-Christian chick, bad.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know. It's just
yeah.
bad. You know,
yeah.
If you don't, you know, like go to church, bad. Why?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just bad. And then God's unhappy. And then you out there somewhere in some other plan that he doesn't
want. And
at
some point you just go, I'm in such a deficit. I'll just stay in a deficit, you know?
I remember hitting a point where like, I just was like, yeah, God, I know you're real to some extent. Like I don't fully understand you, but being so mad that I was like, I'm just gonna be a good person and like you can do your own thing and I'll deal with you later and kind of thing. And then it was just like being around a group of people in a church that actually was modeling what it means to be Jesus with skin on and extend grace and love well. That was the thing that started breaking down the walls, or it was kind of like, all right, I still don't know about you, God, but I want to be around these people and I want to be here. And then it just turned into like serving all the time in this youth group and being around nonstop. And then eventually like coming to like a point of like facing the question of like, okay, now I've seen what I think is real of you. Like, okay, if this is who you are, I'm all in. But it's that thing of changing from it being rules-based or religion just for the sake of it, or like, well, I don't want to go to hell, so I want to do this thing, like the actual reality of what it means to follow And that's the part that's so good. I mean, I know like some people really like rules and they like having goals and targets to hit, but it's interesting, like, because we have those things, but God works very different. Like when you analyze David as a child after God's own heart, and you look at his life on a whole, it's fascinating, because you're like, what? And then you're like, what? And he wrote most of the Psalms? What? Like, the heck? Like, but then he's also with Bathsheba and he killed her husband. Like, what? Like what's going on? So it's very interesting. But yeah.
Well, that's something that I appreciated about Sunday, John. And that's kind of where I was hoping this would kind of land, is we talked all about God actually revealing himself and showing Moses and his people who he really was, like cutting through all those misconceptions, you know. And for you, Jala, like that's an amazing part of your story is God was still, like, you know, from a human point of view, fighting to cut through the clutter, to actually show you who he was. And he used people to do that, which is amazing. And that's how he's doing it. Yeah. He's showing himself through his word, and then through the people, you know, that are being transformed, supposed to have the Holy Spirit inside of us, you know? Yeah. And I think that like clear picture of who God actually is coming from the story of Moses was like a game changer for me about, I'm going to say 3 or 4 years ago. Like, and this is like post seminary, like I'm in ministry and I still have a little bit of that, my old, like God's keeping score, like thing, like that's kind of my perception of him, even though theologically I know it's like, yeah, he's a God of grace and love, but bottom line is, you know, he's a God who keeps score, and we have to like toe the line, you know. And John, Exodus, this whole thing of where God introduces himself and tells Moses, here's who I really am, and the way he rolls it out just floored me. And I'm honestly still like trying to unpack all that it means, you know?
Yeah. And I think what's so rich is the context too, of it's a bunch of people that said they would keep score. And we were just talking about it before we got on, like literally they have 40 years of crying out. When Moses leaves Egypt and goes to Midian, there's 40 years of crying out. Moses shows up. They go through the plagues. They see God's hand first, like in front of their face. They feel the effects of it. They're set free. They go through the parting of the Red Sea. They get all the way into the wilderness where they're fed from manna and quails, which just, I mean, it's magical, right? It's like stuff fairy tales are written out of. And then on top of that, God shows up on a mountain to talk to them, and he's been leading them in this pillar of, you know, cloud and fire. And you just go, he shows up on the mountain in 30 days from when they say, we're all in, we'll do this, we'll keep everyone you've told us. It's like 30 days. They're like, we don't know where he is. We're like, what's happening, you know, and they're off on their own tangent. And I think that for me in this week, like seeing God show up and proclaim who he is in spite of what has just happened, like that to me is so rich. And then for him to not show up and go, I am the rule keeper, I will make sure that you toe the line. He doesn't, like, that's the last thing that he says. Not, you know, and he gives these characteristics that, I mean, when you look at Jesus, it's like you see front and center, full color, and all of that. And I think for me, that was probably one of the big takeaways from the weekend, was catching the context and catching the intimacy of Moses and God. And there's only one reason: God chose to. Yep. Like, you know, I mean, it blows your mind. It's like, out of everything that I grew up with about God, that's the opposite, 100% the opposite of my impression of God from church life.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause didn't you grow up with this impression, like somehow God like has to, you know, like beat people back in line? You know, it's like created the world, humans screwed it up. And then you're like, God's like, I'm out here and I got to beat the sin out of everybody and get this world back into shape, right?
Yep.
And it's like, no, all of this is optional for God. Like, first of all, didn't have to create anything. So then he's like, I'm going to put people out here so I can love them. And then at any point, like you proved with Noah, right? I mean, he can flood it. He can flood this world. He can burn it down. I mean, he can do whatever he wants. And then he's like, no, I'm just going to keep hanging with these people. And I'm going to give them the 10 commandments and all the laws. And then they're going to break it. And then they're going to start worshiping, build themselves an idol out of gold, start dancing around that while I'm literally out here, with you people. And he's still going to stick with them. And they go through all of the ups and downs of life before Jesus, where they rebel and they get conquered and God's still with them, and they go get exiled and God's still with them, still showing himself, still revealing himself. And then we get to Jesus. I mean, God keeps pursuing, and it's entirely optional. Like, he doesn't have to do it, which says so much to me about God's heart. And that's the game changer for me, is when you realize like God's motive out of all of this is not this world needs to get fixed. Like, get off my lawn, kids, you screwed up my world, right? It's, he wants to be with us and pursue us. It's his heart. It's his love that leads him. And that is just an absolute game changer for me.
It's almost like in that lawn analogy, it's God showing up, fixing the lawn, showing us how to fix the lawn, and then going, hey, there's a whole bunch of lawns over there. You want to be a part of fixing those? It's like, wait, what?
Yes.
And especially when and that's the other piece of it, like from the Moses thing, the God who is so, I don't even know what the word is. Massive doesn't seem to do it justice. Majestic doesn't seem to do it justice. That he's got to hide Moses to protect him from vaporizing in his presence. That God is the God that wants intimacy with us, so much so that he would die, put his Holy Spirit in us, that any given moment of any day, we can walk through this intimacy that Moses had, like, anywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, I don't know, man.
It blows your mind. And in fact, I tend to think that God, I mean, obviously God at any point could literally just like, pull back the curtain of heaven and show us what's up, right? Like, here's me, here's truth, here's all the stuff that's false, and it's gone. I mean, and there would be not a single person on this earth that would doubt or question. In fact, it even talks about, in Philippians 2, at the end, it talks about Philippians 2, where it says every knee will bow to Jesus. I mean, there's a point coming where all the smoke, mirrors, curtains, everything's pulled back, and you're like, this is what's true. And it'll knock everybody on their butt. And you'll either worship or be terrified at that moment,
Well, and what's interesting is like Moses not being able to like fully see it because it would like overwhelm them or vaporize them or whatever. I heard a person talking almost of like describing hell as like could it be fire and burning and torture forever? Maybe, who knows, but like even the aspect of being in the presence of God face to face for eternity, but not having the covering of Jesus, like that in itself would be like overwhelming in a negative way. Like, because it's that aspect of how it was before, where it's like, God's like, I can't, Moses, you can't see me. But it's like, that's the aspect of like, versus those who believe and have chosen, to follow his life, like they'll be in his presence and it'll be overwhelming, but it's a positive, like the glory of the Lord will be a positive thing. But for those that are without it, like they sit in eternity of, it's painful, like it's unbearable. And so that part always for me has kind of been like a fascinating concept, because I'm like, well, you get a picture of that in the Old Testament of like, as I said, like that does sound like to be unworthy and be face to face with the Creator. Like, and I think even on that piece of like, that's been one for me of like, I don't know, torture or whatever it will be, like that for me, like I would hope as many people as like I can be used to help them. Yeah, we're like covered to be joyfully overwhelmed by the presence of the word is what I want. But it's interesting for me how much I feel like, I mean, we're all just as dumb as the Israelites are. Because I can read it all the time and have a posture like, you guys are so stupid. Like, you guys have seen more than our generation of believers will ever see. And, like, we have faith, but then you guys see all this stuff and you guys just whining or whatever. But then I sit there and think about it. I'm like, I'm much different. Like, I'm pretty dumb. Like, I moan and complain and whine, so.
Oh, yeah. Well, when you look at the golden calf, episode, which of course is famous. I mean, you learn about that in Sunday school or whatever, but like you say, on one hand, you look at it and go, who does that? Who has God up on the mountain? And then you're down here going, oh no, where's God? Let's make ourselves an idol to worship. But then, I mean, the truth is, I mean, I think John, you were saying it, like, this is what we do when things get uncertain, is we build ourselves an idol. Like we look for some way to control or explain or give meaning or hope. And we don't, in our corner of the world, it's not so many golden calves, but we have so many other ways that we put something in the place of hope and worship and, goals for our life where God should be,
Yeah. Well, and I even think some of that goes back to, your view of church and the Bible, and in that keeping score, where that can actually be a way I control God. And those things that can be very healthy spiritual disciplines all of a sudden become the very thing that I'm using to manipulate God into what I want. And that, I mean, and that's so subtle. And, the obvious ones are the person who is, running off and head first into something that's destructive. And you go, well, yeah, that's not going to end well. The subtle ones are, okay, well, I'm going to pray more because then God has to answer me more, or I'm going to read my Bible more. Hence, if I do that and I gain more knowledge, then I gain a better standing. And if I gain a better standing, then I'm somehow more secure. Like it's just so subtle when it is in church world. But I think it's the same thing of that idol where I like Tim Keller's line that an idol being anything that we seek that can to provide for us what only God can. And it's that idea of it's just subtle. Something slips in to provide for us because we think we're lacking in some way. And we think that God hasn't provided in some way. So we're going to go provide. But we don't have that conversation and go, well, I'm not trusting God anymore, so I'm going to go over. It's a subtle shift. Yeah. And I think that's the constant, like, staying back to the true north thing of, okay, I'm going to continue to put myself in a posture of, okay, God, I know you're on the mountain. I see you. I know you're up to something. I'm just you told me to stay here. I'm going to stay here and keep my eyes on that mountain. And I think that's the journey of faith, like moving forward, going, and we use that language this weekend, like run towards the roar, not away from the lion's roar. And just the idea of the very thing I fear, if it is a lack of security, okay, God, I'm going to lean into you more, not less, versus leaning over here and trying to manipulate my world to feel more secure, And I mean, I've heard, some people are pulling their money out of the bank because it'll be more secure with them. Well, like that again is one of those where it's like, what are you trusting to hold you secure? Like what place has money taken in my life that equals some form of safety, security, status, whatever it looks like, versus going, man, I'm going to trust the God that provided it in the first place,
Yep.
But it's tough, man.
It's hard because, like, those things at times can seem like a double-edged sword because you get one end of people where it's like, I need to control this, and I need to, like, what's that? It's like, I'm going to pull out all my money or switch what I'm in. I need to sell quick or buy, like, it's like a form of security. But then you get a whole nother lap of people that are like, no, I don't need to go to the doctor. I don't need to get checked because, like, I'm secure and God's got me. But there's a piece of, like, well, God gave you doctors for a reason, like, and wisdom and like that. And that was my grandparents' journey and, like, what they were taught. Like, they were taught, like, if you're going to doctor, well, why? Do you not trust that God's got you? He's got you. It's like, well, no, you're getting older. You should go get checked. And, like, both of them waited till it was like they were a hot mess to ever do anything. And so it's like, it's interesting thing. Or the old thing you always hear of, like, there's a flood and a guy on the roof and, you know, a boat comes, helicopter comes. The guy's like, I'm good. God's got me, whatever. He dies and goes to heaven. He's like, God, you didn't send anyone. He's like, yeah, I did. I sent boat, helicopter. He said, no. And I think it's a hard place because if you're not seeking the Lord on that, and you're not actually, like, praying and talking with him and spending time in his word and, like, what's my posture supposed to be in this, and God, what do you want? And actually, like, slowing down enough to hear his spirit speaking, I think then we start operating out of whatever our wiring or brain tells us is correct, or panic mode, versus, like, so then you get the Israelites are no longer like 30 days. They're not sitting, praying, trusting God, like, hey, let's stay focused. Let's keep talking about the things God did. It instantly starts going to, like, we need to start, like, doing our own thing. Like, maybe he's not a thing. And if we pray to freaking golden cow, like, someone's going to magically have it. Like, I just feel like what we think is logic takes over. But the problem is, like, we're not necessarily, like, logical people, even though we think we are. Like, our logic and reasoning is very off. And I think that's the hard part is, like, if you were to stay focused and your eyes on Jesus, he's going to guide your steps. And then you can have the assurance of knowing what he wants, but you might have to wait, and it's probably not going to be how you want it. But we don't want to wait. We don't want to be patient. We want instant results the way we want them. Like, it's going back to what you're saying. Like, we want God to be God, but we also want God to, like, you do what I say, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Owen.
I was going to agree with you, Jala, that, you know, faith and optimism are two different things. And I think a lot of times we get that confused. So we will, you know, of course we need to be smart, right? Like, if the storm's coming, board up your windows, you know, if you need to go to the doctor, go to the doctor, you know? And so, but on the other hand, we have this idea that if I take every step I can to protect myself from the future, then I'm going to hope for the best. And that hope for the best is a poor substitute for faith, which comes from faith is actually trust that God is who he says he is, and he's going to act in the future like he has in the past to take care of the people he loves. And I think that's and that's where this, going back to Moses and getting where he gets to learn about God's character through this experience up on the mountain, is like, it's so huge, because that's what faith really requires, right? I mean, faith requires us, like you were saying, John, faith requires us to actually know the God we're putting our trust in. So that's where I think, John, like, back to your point, you know, we can be prepared. If, like, hey, you think you need to take all your money out of the bank? Like, I mean, hey, I'm bad at finances. That's, you know, made me the man I am today. So I can't give you financial advice. But what I could say is, be sure you really know the God you're putting your faith in. And the more you know him, who he is, his character, his heart, his purpose for you, his plans for you and the world, all the way down to the end of time and then on into eternity, the more that is, like, woven into your heart and soul, the more I think you find yourself making decisions that line up with your faith versus your fear. And it's not this faith over fear, like, hey, hope for the best. Like, don't be afraid, man. Everything's going to be fine. Like, hey, everything may not be fine. Yeah. We have believers all throughout the centuries that it was not fine. They got fed to lions. They, I mean, all that. I mean, you look at Hebrews 11, the faith chapter, right? Talks all about all the things that went wrong. Hey, Jeremiah got cut in half. Daniel got fed to lion. I mean, things didn't always turn out fine, but from God's point of view, they did. And so that's the faith that we have, is this trust that God will always be who he is. Like John, like the last week, you talked about God revealing himself. His name is I am. I mean, he exists. Who he is who he is. In this moment, the last moment, the next moment, and that's where we can anchor our faith,
Yeah. And I think, Jolly, you said it, you used the word posture. And I think, Owen, what you're talking about with the optimism and faith, like, to me, it's the posture that I sit in, even in the waiting, right? Even in the hardship. I think of James, where he says, hey, we'll make plans if the Lord wills it, like, and again, it's this posture of, like, we're trusting in the hand of God versus my posture being, I'm securing my own. And I think one of the biggest areas that I've learned, and I'm still learning the hard way, is with my kids, man. Like I got kids I got one who is done with college in under a month. I've got one who's sitting, as I'm leaving the house today, sitting at a little table doing distance learning. I mean, a scope is so wide, and yet the same faith and the same posture of, God, I'm learning afresh how to walk with a soon-to-be graduate of college who's trying to figure out jobs, and the faith that she's trying to exemplify. And, she just found out yesterday that she should have applied 3 months ago and no one told her. And so now trying to find a job she's down to minimal options, and trying to help her see it's okay. The Lord's got it. And we just need to trust him in it. If you needed to know 3 months ago, I'm sure God's faithfulness, he could have made it. I mean, if he can show up on a mountain and, but again, it's going back to the posture in, as things occur, as things happen, it's the trust in God is good. God is with me. God is not surprised. God is compassionate and gracious, all the way down to this little girl who's frustrated in first grade doing distance learning, and her faith in that moment is much different than, and I think as a dad sitting in that moment going, God, I don't have this. Like, it's abundantly clear I don't got this. But I'm going to trust you that you're going to give me words of wisdom. You're going to trust you that I'm going to stay engaged and stay in the fight instead of trying to control it and make life easy for everybody. And it's just this tension that we live in all realms at any given moment. But I think that word posture is a really good, like, what is our posture in our growth journey, in our faith, in how we view God? I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard because God, I mean, essentially is asking us to hold all these things with an open hand in life. And that's a really hard thing. I mean, he's asking you to hold your finances with an open hand, your career, your family, your hopes, your dreams, your wants, your desires, because like none of these things are inherently wrong or bad. But in the same manner of, like, we make plans, but God are you going to hold those plans with an open hand? And I think a lot of the time, for myself included, you have ideas of how you think they should be, and they are good things, and you think therefore God should make them happen, and then he doesn't. And I think the hardest part is, like, if your posture isn't that, and if you, I don't know, you have God in this box of, like, his job is to just do whatever you want, how you want, like, you're going to be disappointed time and time again. And it's a hard pill to swallow. And I feel like it's part of our growth and journey, though. And that's where I love, like, I mean, going back even to the Psalms, like, there's a brutal honesty in what's hard, but then there's a pointing back to still, this is who God is, trust him. And I think for the people who are like I like the checklist and the rules in my journey and walk, and like, cause I can hit all that. Well, what happens when you're faced with disappointment and all that? Like you get a Job who, like, faithful to God, good and wonderful, and he gets it bad, like real bad. So I think for me, it's just been a learning thing of what does God even want? And like you're saying, oh geez, my dog's losing it. Someone's I think someone's about to come. Someone's ringing the doorbell.
Oh no.
I don't know. So pause for me on midweek.
Well, there we go. That's about the time to wrap it up, guys. I was about to call the bell. So Jolly's got to answer his door. So
we literally got to go answer the bell. So.
Yeah, exactly. So there it is. No, but that's actually a great place to pause the conversation and just leave with that thought. Like, God's faithful, keeping a memory of how God's taken care of us in the past, knowing he's strong enough and powerful enough to walk you through a Red Sea if that's what it takes for his plan and purpose for you to move forward, and then trusting with that. That's a great place to land it. So, boys, thanks for the time. Always enjoy visiting with you.
Yep.
Much love to you. We'll see you next Sunday, if not before. If you've been joining in this conversation, we are delighted that you've been part of it with us. We are here every Wednesday. We premiere at 7 p.m. Arizona time. So you're always welcome to join us. Don't forget other opportunities to connect with us. If something in this conversation has resonated with you, you've heard us talk about this God who reveals himself, that shows himself up through the ups and downs of life. If you would like to know more about this, you want to know what that's like to live in that kind of life, then we're here to talk and connect with you. You can find us tomorrow morning on Morning Coffee right here on YouTube, and then you can connect with us on Sundays. We are live in Prescott campus at 8:30 and 10:30 in person. We are online live YouTube at 10:30. You can also catch us at 6. Just however you can, just connect with us. Look for us on Facebook and Instagram as well. Much love to you. We'll see you Sunday, if not before. Have a great night, guys.